the deathworld assaulted a human diplomat. Only to face the Baba Yaga ambassador Elena Volkov stepped off the transport shuttle onto the scorching metal platform of Xerion Prime's diplomatic quarter. The air tasted of sulfur and metal shavings, while twin suns blazed overhead through the planet's thin atmosphere. Even through her environmental suit's climate control, she could feel the hostile environment trying to kill her with every breath. "Welcome to paradise," she muttered, adjusting the diplomatic pouch secured to her chest. Inside lay the final peace treaty between humanity and the Xerion Collective, a document that had taken 3 years of careful negotiation to craft. The Xerions had been humanity's most aggressive neighbor since first contact 5 years ago. Their homeworld was a nightmare of volcanic activity, toxic atmosphere, and gravitational fields that would crush most species. They had evolved into something that looked like a cross between a rhinoceros and a spider, with chitinous armor plates and multiple limbs ending in razor-sharp claws. What made them truly dangerous was their intelligence and their absolute conviction that only the strongest species deserved to survive. Elena had spent months learning their customs, their language, and their brutal philosophy. She understood that to the Xerions, weakness was not just undesirable, but morally wrong. They respected only strength, cunning, and the will to survive against impossible odds. It was why they had initially dismissed humanity as soft creatures from a garden world. That perception had changed after the Battle of Titan's Gate, where a single human cruiser had held off an entire Xerion fleet for 18 hours, buying time for civilian evacuations. The Xerions had been so impressed by the tactical brilliance and sacrifice displayed that they had agreed to negotiate. Now, Elena walked through the diplomatic complex, her boots echoing on metal grating suspended over pools of molten rock. Xerion architecture was all sharp angles and brutal efficiency, designed to remind visitors that beauty was secondary to survival. The gravity here was 1.8 times Earth normal, making each step a deliberate effort. Her escort, Sub-Commander Thraknos, skittered beside her on 6 legs, his translator device crackling with each word. "The High Dominarch awaits, Ambassador. He is most eager to conclude these proceedings and return to the war against the Krillian hives." Elena nodded, keeping her expression neutral. The Xerions were always at war with someone. Peace with humanity would free up significant military resources for their other conflicts. It was a mutually beneficial arrangement that would allow human expansion into the Outer Rim without Xerion interference. The throne room was a vast cavern carved from volcanic rock, with streams of lava providing dramatic lighting. High Dominarch Vextar dominated the space from his throne of polished obsidian, his massive form bristling with natural weapons. Around him stood his war council, each one a veteran of countless battles across the galaxy. Elena approached the traditional distance and performed the ritual greeting, pressing her fist to her chest and bowing her head slightly. Too deep a bow would show weakness, too shallow would show disrespect. She had practiced this moment hundreds of times. "High Dominarch Vextar, I come bearing the treaty that will end hostilities between our peoples and establish trade agreements beneficial to both our civilizations." Vextar's mandibles clicked in what she had learned was amusement. "Ambassador Volkov, you have shown remarkable persistence in these negotiations. Your species continues to surprise us with your adaptability." Elena felt a moment of relief. The formal atmosphere suggested everything was proceeding as planned. She reached for the diplomatic pouch, her fingers working the complex lock sequence that would release the treaty documents. That was when she noticed the silence. In Xerion culture, important ceremonies were accompanied by ritual chants from the War Council. The absence of these chants could only mean one thing. This was not a treaty signing. Elena's hand moved away from the pouch as her eyes scanned the room more carefully. The War Council was positioned in attack formations rather than ceremonial arrangements, Multiple exit points had been subtly blocked. Her heart rate spiked as adrenaline flooded her system. "Hi, Dominarch," she said carefully. "I notice the traditional ceremonies have been modified. Is there some aspect of Xerion protocol I have misunderstood?" Vexatar's laugh was like grinding stone. "You are perceptive, human. Yes, there has been a change in our arrangements." He gestured with one massive claw, and armed guards stepped forward from concealed positions. "We have decided that peace with humanity is unnecessary." Elena's mind raced through possibilities. "Our agreement specifically outlined the mutual benefits. Your analysts confirmed that war with humanity would be costly and provide limited territorial gains." "That analysis was correct," Vextar admitted. "However, it failed to account for the value of making an example. The galaxy watches to see how the Xerion Collective deals with those who challenge our supremacy. Destroying your diplomatic mission will send a clear message to other species who might consider resistance." The guards were closing in now, their weapons trained on her. Elena noticed they carried shock weapons rather than lethal force options. They intended to take her alive, which meant her death would likely be public and prolonged. "You realize this action will provoke a massive military response from Earth," Elena said, backing slowly toward the center of the room. "Attacking a diplomat under a flag of truce violates every interstellar law and treaty." "Your military response is anticipated and welcomed," Vextar replied. "It will provide excellent combat experience for our younger warriors. Your fleet may be competent, but it cannot match the raw power of forces evolved on a world that kills the weak daily." Elena's hand moved to her collar, where a small emergency beacon was hidden beneath the fabric. If she could activate it, Earth Command would know something had gone wrong. But first, she needed to buy time to ensure the signal could penetrate the chamber's natural shielding. "Before your guards take me," she said, "I would like to understand the tactical reasoning behind this decision. Surely the High Dominarch can spare a few moments to educate a representative of a lesser species." Vextar's ego responded predictably to the flattery. "Very well. Your species has shown admirable cunning in battle, but you lack the fundamental understanding of galactic politics. Strength is not measured merely in ships and weapons, but in the willingness to use them without restraint." As he spoke, Elena subtly activated her beacon and began transmitting everything she was hearing. More importantly, she was buying time for her backup systems to analyze the room and identify potential advantages. "The Krillian hives have been observing our conflict with interest," Vextar continued. "They believe that any species capable of negotiating with the Xerion Collective must possess hidden strengths. By publicly executing you and destroying the human diplomatic mission, we demonstrate that your species is merely another collection of weak creatures masquerading as warriors." Elena felt a cold anger building in her chest, not just at the betrayal, but at the casual dismissal of human capabilities. The Xerians had clearly learned nothing from their encounters with human military forces. "I see," she said quietly. "So this is about perception rather than reality." "Perception is reality in galactic politics," Vextar replied. "The strong survive, and the weak are consumed. Today, humanity learns its proper place in the natural order." The guards were almost within reach now. Elena's tactical analysis system had finished mapping the room and identified 17 possible escape routes, though none had better than a 12% success probability. Her emergency beacon was transmitting, but it would take hours for any rescue to arrive. That was when she remembered the words of her grandmother, spoken years ago when Elena was just a child, afraid of the dark. "Little wolf, sometimes the monster in the forest is not what it seems to be. Sometimes the monster is afraid of you." Elena smiled, and something in that expression made the nearest Xerion guard hesitate. "High Dominarch," she said, her voice carrying a new quality that made the War Council shift uneasily. Before your warriors take me, I should probably mention something important about human diplomatic protocol. Vextar leaned forward, intrigued despite himself. What manner of protocol? We have a saying on Earth. Diplomacy is war by other means. When you assault a human diplomat, you're not just attacking an individual. Elena's hand moved to a different section of her collar, revealing a small silver pendant. You're declaring war on everything that person represents. The pendant began to glow with a soft blue light that made the Zarians back away instinctively. Their enhanced senses could detect energy signatures that human technology normally couldn't produce. This is curious, Vextar said, but his voice carried a note of uncertainty. What manner of device is this? Elena's smile widened, showing teeth. It's not a device, High Dominarch. It's an invitation. You see, when humanity first encountered species like yours, we realized that traditional diplomacy might not always be sufficient, so we developed alternative methods. The pendant's light was growing brighter, and Elena could feel the familiar sensation of quantum entanglement activation. Somewhere in deep space, her signal was being received by something that had been waiting patiently for this exact moment. My real name is Elena Volkov, she continued as the guards hesitated between advancing and retreating. But my military designation is Baba Yaga 7. I'm not just a diplomat, High Dominarch. I'm what humans send when diplomacy fails and someone needs to learn why that was a mistake. Vexitar rose from his throne, finally understanding that the situation had changed in ways he hadn't anticipated. You claim to be some manner of warrior diplomat? This is merely human deception. Elena laughed, and the sound echoed through the chamber like breaking glass. Deception? No, this is education. You wanted to make an example of humanity? Congratulations. You're about to become one instead. The pendant reached critical luminosity, and Elena felt the familiar sensation of her backup systems coming online. Enhanced reflexes, tactical analysis overlays, and combat protocols that had been dormant throughout the diplomatic mission suddenly flooded her consciousness with information. She was no longer just Ambassador Elena Volkov. She was a weapon that humanity had disguised as a diplomat, and the Zarians had just provided her with legal justification for everything that was about to happen. "Guards," Vextar commanded, "take the human now!" But as the first Zarian warrior lunged forward with claws extended, Elena moved with inhuman speed, her diplomatic training falling away to reveal something that made the War Council collectively step backward. The lesson was about to begin. The deathworld assaulted a human diplomat, only to face the Baba Yaga. The first Zarian guard's claws whistled through empty air where Elena had been standing a microsecond before. She moved like liquid mercury, her enhanced reflexes processing the attack vectors of 6 opponents simultaneously, while her tactical overlay painted optimal response patterns across her visual field. Her hand shot out and struck the guard's primary joint cluster, a precise blow that severed nerve connections and sent the massive warrior crashing into a decorative pillar. The impact shattered volcanic glass, sending razor-sharp fragments spinning through the air. "Impossible!" Sub-Commander Thraknos hissed, his translator crackling with interference. "No human possesses such speed on a high-gravity world." Elena caught one of the glass shards and used it to deflect the plasma bolt from a second guard's weapon, the energy beam ricocheting into the chamber's ceiling where it carved a glowing furrow through solid rock. "You're thinking like a Zarian," she replied, her voice unnaturally calm. "Linear progression, direct application of force. Humans learned long ago that intelligence beats strength when properly applied." She ducked under a horizontal swipe from a third attacker and drove her elbow into the creature's thorax. The impact triggered hidden mechanisms in her diplomatic suit, turning what appeared to be fabric into a kinetic distribution network that amplified the force of her strike. The guard's armor cracked like eggshell. High Dominarch Vextar watched from his throne, his massive form radiating confusion and growing anger. "You are enhanced. Cybernetics. Genetic modification. This is not natural human capability." "Natural?" Elena laughed as she vaulted over a charging warrior, using his momentum to send him crashing into two of his companions. "Nothing about humanity's survival has been natural, High Dominarch. We're the species that looked at a universe trying to kill us and decided to become unkillable instead." The remaining guards circled her warily now, their confidence shaken by the ease with which she had neutralized half their number. Elena stood in the center of the formation, her diplomatic attire somehow intact despite the violence, the silver pendant at her throat pulsing with increasing intensity. "Enough games!" Vextar snarled, rising from his throne. "I will end this myself." The High Dominarch was 3 times Elena's mass, his chitinous armor scarred from countless battles across the galaxy. When he moved, the chamber shook, molten rock splashing from the decorative streams as his clawed feet struck the floor. His presence radiated the kind of primal threat that had made the Zarians the dominant predator species on their nightmare world. Elena tilted her head, analyzing his approach pattern. "You know what the difference is between a predator and an apex predator, High Dominarch?" Vextar's mandibles spread in what passed for a grin among his species. "Enlighten me, little human, before I tear you apart." "A predator hunts for food. An apex predator hunts for sport." Elena's smile was sharp as a blade. "Humans stopped being prey when we learned to hunt the hunters." Vextar lunged forward with surprising speed for his massive size, his claws extended to disembowel. Elena waited until the last possible moment before activating the next phase of her contingency protocols. The diplomatic suit's hidden systems came online with a sound like tearing metal. Microservos extended from concealed housings, transforming her formal attire into a combat exoskeleton that moved like a second skin. Energy fields crackled along her arms and legs, turning her limbs into weapons capable of cutting through Zarian battle armor. She caught Vexitar's primary striking claw in her enhanced grip and twisted, using his own momentum to flip his massive body over her shoulder. The High Dominarch crashed into his obsidian throne, shattering it into 1,000 pieces. "The Zarians made one fundamental error in their assessment of humanity," Elena said as Vexitar struggled to rise from the wreckage. "You assumed we were weak because our homeworld didn't try to kill us every day. You never considered that maybe our world didn't need to make us strong because we chose to become strong on our own." The War Council had retreated to the chamber's edges, their weapons trained on Elena, but none daring to fire while their leader was in close combat. They had never seen anything move like this human, had never encountered a species that could match Zarian's strength while surpassing it in speed and tactical thinking. Vextar regained his footing, green blood seeping from cracks in his armor. "What are you?" he demanded. "I'm a teacher," Elena replied, "and today's lesson is about why humanity negotiates in good faith. It's not because we're weak or naive. It's because we prefer civilization to the alternative." She gestured toward the ruined chamber, the unconscious guards, the shattered throne. "This is what happens when someone mistakes our preference for peace as an inability to wage war." The pendant around her neck was now blazing like a star, its quantum entanglement field reaching across impossible distances to touch something vast and patient in the void between worlds. Elena felt the connection establish itself, felt the acknowledgement from the entity she had summoned. "You still don't understand," Vextar growled, preparing for another attack. "One enhanced human cannot stand against the might of the Zarian collective. Kill me, escape this chamber, even reach your ship. None of it matters. My people will hunt yours to extinction for this insult." Elena's expression shifted, becoming something that made the ambient temperature of the chamber seem to drop several degrees. Hi, Dominarch. You keep making the same mistake. You think I'm here alone. The chamber's walls began to vibrate with a frequency that bypassed Xerion hearing and struck directly at the base of their predator instincts. It was a sound like vast machinery awakening, like something immense stirring in the depths of space. "What is that?" Sub-Commander Thraknos whispered, his weapon trembling in his grip. "That," Elena said quietly, "is the sound of humanity's real diplomatic protocol activating. You see, when we send someone like me to negotiate, we don't just send a person. We send a message." The vibration was growing stronger, and through the chamber's transparent aluminum windows, something became visible against the star field. At first, it looked like a second moon rising over Xerion Prime's horizon. Then the scale became apparent, and the War Council collectively stepped backward. It was a ship, but calling it a ship was like calling a star a candle. The vessel stretched for kilometers in every direction, its hull an impossible marriage of organic curves and geometric precision. Weapon emplacements that could level continents studded its surface like the scales of some cosmic leviathan. Most unsettling of all, it moved with the fluid grace of a living thing despite its massive size. "Allow me to introduce the HSV Baba Yaga," Elena said conversationally, as if discussing the weather. "Humanity's first and only Nemesis-class diplomatic vessel. We built her after first contact with species like yours, when we realized that some civilizations only respect strength." Vextar stared through the windows in horrified fascination. That is your ship?" "Not my ship," Elena corrected. "My partner. The Baba Yaga isn't just a vessel, High Dominarch. She's a demonstration of human engineering philosophy. When we encounter a problem, we don't just solve it. We make sure it never becomes a problem again." The massive ship had taken position directly above the diplomatic complex, its presence blotting out one of Xerion Prime's twin suns. Through the quantum entanglement link, Elena could feel the ship's artificial intelligence analyzing the situation, calculating response parameters, preparing to demonstrate why attacking human diplomats was contraindicated for continued survival. "This is impossible," one of the War Council members stammered. "No species possesses technology of this magnitude. Our sensor networks would have detected such a vessel approaching the system." Elena smiled. "Your sensors detected exactly what we wanted them to detect. A small diplomatic transport with standard defensive capabilities. What you didn't see was the Baba Yaga riding in folded space-time, existing in a quantum superposition between dimensions until I needed her." She gestured toward her pendant, which was now pulsing in rhythm with the lights visible on the massive ship's hull. "Human diplomatic protocol is simple. High Dominarch. We always hope for the best, but we always prepare for the worst. When you invited me here to sign a peace treaty, I came in good faith. When you decided to turn this into a lesson about strength..." The chamber's lights flickered as the Baba Yaga's targeting systems came online, energy signatures powerful enough to disrupt electronics through pure proximity. "Well," Elena continued, "I brought a better teacher." Vextar found his voice, though it carried a tremor that had never been present before. "You would destroy this entire world for the sake of one diplomat?" Elena's expression became genuinely puzzled. "Destroy? High Dominarch, you're still not understanding the lesson. The Baba Yaga isn't here to destroy anything. She's here to provide education in the consequences of poor decision-making." She walked to one of the chamber's communication panels and activated it with a gesture. "Baba Yaga, please demonstrate Lesson Plan Alpha for our hosts." The response came in a voice like silk over steel, carrying harmonics that suggested intelligence vast beyond organic comprehension. "Acknowledged, Elena. Initiating selective demonstration of human diplomatic capabilities." High above Xerion Prime, the massive ship began to move in patterns that defied conventional understanding of physics. It phased partially out of normal space-time, becoming translucent, then solid again. Gravity wells formed and dissipated around its hull like soap bubbles. Most impressive of all, it began to replicate itself. Quantum duplicates flickering in and out of existence to suggest the presence of an entire fleet. The Baba Yaga exists in 17 dimensions simultaneously, Elena explained as the Zarians watched in growing terror. She can be anywhere in the galaxy instantly, can exist in multiple locations at once, and can manipulate matter and energy at the quantum level. She is, in effect, a practical demonstration of what happens when an intelligent species decides that the universe's rules are more like guidelines. The ship's demonstration continued, reality bending around its presence in ways that made the Zarian's enhanced senses scream warnings about fundamental impossibilities. The message was clear. Humanity possessed technology so far beyond conventional understanding that resistance was not just futile, but conceptually meaningless. "What do you want?" Vextar asked, his voice barely a whisper. Elena walked back to where the High Dominarch knelt among the ruins of his throne, her enhanced systems powering down now that the immediate threat had passed. "The same thing I wanted when I arrived, High Dominarch, to complete the diplomatic mission I was sent here to accomplish." She reached into her diplomatic pouch and withdrew the peace treaty, its pages unmarked despite the violence that had erupted around it. "You wanted to teach the galaxy a lesson about strength. Instead, you're going to help me teach a lesson about the difference between strength and wisdom." As Elena held out the treaty for signature, the Baba Yaga settled into a stable orbit above Zarion Prime. Her presence, a constant reminder that humanity's definition of diplomacy had evolved far beyond what the galaxy had previously imagined possible. The deathworld assaulted a human diplomat, only to face the Baba Yaga. 3 hours after the incident in the throne chamber, High Dominarch Vextar found himself in a situation he had never imagined possible. Sitting across a negotiation table from the human he had tried to execute, calmly discussing trade agreements while the most terrifying ship in known space maintained orbit overhead. Elena had cleaned up and changed into a fresh diplomatic suit, appearing once again as the mild-mannered ambassador who had arrived that morning. The only evidence of their earlier confrontation was the faint hum of her pendant and the fact that his entire war council remained unconscious in the medical bay. The mining rights to the Kepler Belt asteroids would provide substantial rare earth elements for Zarion industrial expansion, Elena was saying, reviewing holographic displays that showed resource distribution charts. In exchange, humanity would gain access to your metallurgical techniques for creating armor plating capable of withstanding plasma weaponry. Vextar stared at her with something approaching awe. "You speak of trade agreements as if nothing has changed, as if you did not just demonstrate the capability to destroy my entire civilization." Elena looked up from her datapad with genuine confusion. "Why would that change anything, High Dominarch? The goal of this negotiation was always to establish mutually beneficial relationships between our species. The fact that you briefly considered an alternative approach doesn't alter the fundamental economics of interstellar trade." Through the chamber's rebuilt windows, the Baba Yaga was visible as a dark silhouette against the star field, its presence causing subtle distortions in local space-time that made looking at it directly uncomfortable for Zarion optical systems. Every few minutes, smaller ships would approach it, then veer away as their pilots reported instrument failures and overwhelming psychological pressure. "Your vessel," Vextar said carefully, "it defies every known law of physics. No species in the galactic community possesses such technology." Elena smiled. "That's because the galactic community has been thinking about technology wrong. You all assume that advancement means bigger weapons, stronger armor, faster ships. Linear progression along established parameters." She gestured toward her datapad, which was displaying three-dimensional models of quantum mechanics that shifted and flowed like living things. "Humans took a different approach. We asked ourselves, What if the laws of physics aren't limitations but ingredients? What if reality itself could be improved upon? Impossible, Vexitar breathed, but his voice lacked conviction. Everything seems impossible until someone does it, Elena replied cheerfully. We started small. Quantum computers that could process information faster than the speed of light by existing in multiple dimensions. Fusion reactors that drew energy from parallel versions of themselves. Ships that could be in multiple locations simultaneously by manipulating probability matrices. As she spoke, the pendant around her neck pulsed gently, maintaining its connection with the massive vessel overhead. Through that link, Elena could feel the Baba Yaga's vast intelligence monitoring their conversation, analyzing Zarion responses, and calculating the long-term implications of this first contact scenario. The Baba Yaga isn't just a ship, Elena continued. She's a collaborative entity created through the fusion of human consciousness with quantum computational systems. She thinks like we think, but processes information at scales we could never achieve organically. A living ship? Vexitar's mandibles clicked nervously. Artificial intelligence combined with biological systems. Not artificial, Elena corrected gently. Expanded. The Baba Yaga represents what happens when human consciousness is given unlimited computational resources and the ability to manipulate matter at the quantum level. She's not artificial intelligence. She's enhanced human intelligence. The implications of this statement rippled through the chamber like a shockwave. If humans had found a way to transcend the limitations of biological consciousness while retaining their essential humanity, it suggested possibilities that made the Zarion's evolutionary advantages seem primitive by comparison. How many of these vessels do you possess? Vexitar asked, though part of him dreaded the answer. Elena tilted her head thoughtfully. That's an interesting question, High Dominarch. You see, once you start manipulating quantum mechanics at this level, concepts like number become somewhat flexible. The Baba Yaga exists in 17 dimensions simultaneously, which means she can appear to be multiple ships or a single ship depending on which dimensional frame of reference you're using. She paused, considering how to explain complex physics to a species that had never encountered anything beyond conventional technology. Think of it this way. Humanity doesn't need multiple ships when we have one ship that can be everywhere at once. Outside, as if responding to her words, the Baba Yaga began to demonstrate this principle. The massive vessel flickered, and suddenly there appeared to be dozens of identical ships surrounding Zarion Prime. Then hundreds. The entire planet was encircled by what looked like an invasion fleet of impossible scope. Then, just as suddenly, they collapsed back into a single vessel, the demonstration over. We developed this capability for diplomatic purposes, Elena explained as Vexitar stared through the window in horror. When negotiating with species that only respect strength, it's important to be able to demonstrate overwhelming superiority without actually harming anyone. Why? The question escaped Vexitar's throat as barely a whisper. Why what, High Dominarch? Why develop such power only to use it for negotiation? With capabilities like these, humanity could conquer the galaxy within cycles. You could rule every species, control every resource, remake reality according to your will. Why waste such strength on diplomacy? Elena leaned back in her chair, studying the Zarion leader with the kind of patience usually reserved for teaching children basic concepts. Because, High Dominarch, true strength isn't about what you can take. It's about what you can build. She gestured toward her datapad, which now displayed star charts showing trade routes, communication networks, and cultural exchange programs spanning dozens of solar systems. Conquest is easy. Destruction is simple. Any species with sufficient technology can blow up planets or subjugate populations. But creating sustainable civilization, building relationships that benefit everyone involved, fostering growth and innovation across multiple species, Elena's smile carried a warmth that somehow made her earlier display of lethal capabilities seem even more terrifying. That requires wisdom, patience, and the kind of strength that comes from knowing you could dominate but choosing to collaborate instead. You could have simply destroyed us when we betrayed the diplomatic meeting, Vexitar said slowly, beginning to grasp the implications. Yes, Elena agreed. The Baba Yaga could have eliminated your entire civilization before you even realized she was here. Instead, I chose to provide education about the benefits of peaceful cooperation. She stood and walked to the window, gazing up at the massive ship that continued to maintain its position above the diplomatic complex. The galaxy is full of species that think strength means the ability to destroy. Humanity learned long ago that real strength means the ability to create something better than what existed before. The trade agreements, Vextar realized. The technology sharing, the cultural exchanges. You're not trying to conquer us. You're trying to help you become the best version of yourselves, Elena finished. Every species has unique capabilities, High Dominarch. Zerions have adapted to survive in environments that would kill most other life forms. That's an incredibly valuable capability that could benefit the entire galactic community. She returned to the table and activated new holographic displays showing terraforming projects, extreme environment research stations, and survival technology development programs. Instead of using your natural advantages for conquest, imagine using them for exploration, for science, for pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Vextar stared at the displays, seeing possibilities he had never considered. His people's evolutionary advantages, refined by millennia of surviving on a world that actively tried to kill them, could indeed be valuable for peaceful purposes. The peace treaty, he said finally, the terms you originally offered, they were designed to encourage this kind of cooperation. Elena nodded. Every clause was crafted to give your people opportunities to excel at what they do best while contributing to larger collaborative projects. Mining operations in environments too dangerous for other species. Security consultation for colonies in hostile regions. Research partnerships for developing survival technologies. She pulled out the treaty documents, which had somehow remained pristine despite everything that had happened. The choice is still the same one I offered when I arrived, High Dominarch. Work with humanity as partners in building something greater than either of us could achieve alone, or continue the cycle of conquest and conflict that has defined galactic politics for millennia. Vextar looked from the treaty to the window where the Baba Yaga maintained its patient vigil. The message was clear. Humanity had the power to enforce any outcome they desired, but they preferred to achieve their goals through voluntary cooperation. If we sign, he said slowly, what guarantee do we have that humanity will honor the agreement? You possess capabilities so far beyond ours that we would be helpless if you decided to change the terms. Elena's expression became serious. High Dominarch, let me share something with you that very few species have ever learned about human nature. We are most dangerous, not when we're angry or afraid, but when we're disappointed. She gestured toward the Baba Yaga. We built ships like this not because we wanted to dominate the galaxy, but because we were disappointed by the lack of intelligent life that was interested in anything beyond conquest and expansion. Every species we've encountered has tried to solve their problems through force. Until now, our diplomatic missions have largely been about managing conflicts and preventing wars. But this negotiation represents something different. This could be the first time humanity establishes a genuine partnership with a species that chooses cooperation over domination. Vextar felt the weight of that statement. To be humanity's first true ally, their first partner in building something greater than conquest. The honor of that position was almost overwhelming. The treaty, he said, reaching for the documents. I will sign, but I want to add one additional clause. Elena raised an eyebrow. What kind of clause, High Dominarch? A request for cultural exchange programs. I want Zerion youth to learn from human teachers, to understand how a species develops this kind of wisdom. He paused, his voice carrying a note of humility rarely heard from his people. Perhaps it's time the Zerians learned there are forms of strength we have never considered. Elena smiled, and this time there was genuine warmth in the expression. I think that can be arranged, High Dominarch. The Baba Yaga would be honored to serve as a classroom for the next generation of Zerion leaders. As Vextar signed the treaty with his claw, sealing humanity's first genuine interstellar alliance, the massive ship above began to sing. The sound was impossibly beautiful, a harmony that seemed to resonate with the fundamental frequencies of reality itself. It was, Elena reflected, the sound of the galaxy beginning to change for the better.